What's the impetus for
Hmm?
Letitia James to look into it for the first place?
I think she had a bone to pick with him because
I
I
mean, my
don't
God,
see
what are we
anybody
arguing about? That's my
going
entire
after
argument.
him.
The Letitia James case, it's like, oh, Trump got a loan from Mar-a-Lago that he paid the bank back with interest, and they were happy to do it and said they would do business with him again. Let's fine him $500 million during campaign
Just to be
season.
clear, that's not the case. I know that that is what was said in the court, but uh, not Charles Schwab. Who was it? It was the German bank. Fuck,
I could get more
I forget the
specific
name
if
of
you
the.
want.
They have they have a different. I forget the name of the bank, but anyways, the bank after the case, apparently both of the two guys who testified, Deutsche Bank, yes, Deutsche Bank, they neither one of those executives work there anymore. The Trump, they said that they're no longer doing business with Trump, and that those guys were incorrect. That like the things that he filed were like essential to what it was that he got, and that it either, even though they are going to go and verify themselves a lot of times, there is a trust level with people, especially the more they do business with them, the less they're going to verify, the less they're going to dig, and that these definitely have a huge effect on like how much he paid, like whether like
Okay,
how much
so
in interest
I
we're
just
going
I
to
just want I
extract.
just want to
Like
be clear.
they
I
may have
don't believe
expected
any.
more money from him.
I don't believe anything you're saying, right? Until you show me proof of it.
It was
So
literally said in the Supreme Court case.
show me it.
If
Send
you
me the link. Because
okay,
everything I read that were the executives at Deutsche Bank were generally happy with the loans. They viewed him as a whale.
yeah,
They saw
I
potential for
that was
building a
everything that I
relationship.
heard as
So
well.
that then you're saying, but that was the old guys, or you're saying those were new guys, and the old guys that did the loan with Trump are actually pissed.
No, so the guys who did the loan with him are the guys who testified. The two guys who did the loan with him are the two guys who obviously like they seem to have like somewhat of a relationship with him. Those are the two guys who testified. We
So
don't
the
know, to be clear, we don't know why they don't work there anymore. So they never came out and said these two people were fired, but it does seem like highly coincidental that the two guys that they came out and said were wrong about this also no longer work there. And they didn't end business relationships with Trump over this. They ended business relationships with Trump immediately after, though, on for
So
over
I
the
just
January
you need to
6th stuff.
stop. You need to stop. So what you're saying is this. You tell me if I'm hearing this correct. The guys that
Mhm.
testified at the trial from Deutsche Bank said we're happy. The two guys, we were happy with this. Blah blah blah.
Yes,
Then
yes,
they were let go
and they were
afterwards.
executives.
They were executives. Then they were let go afterwards. The reason for them being fired hasn't been disclosed, but we can infer it may have something to do with this. So far, so good.
Yes.
The new executives are like, actually, we're not happy.
No, I don't even think the new executives. I believe that it was like higher ups above them. Like I don't know who exactly, but from what I understand is that it was higher ups that were
So the
the ones who
executives,
gave this
so the
statement up.
executives that did the loan with Trump were happy. The people that replaced
Yes.
them, we don't really know. They haven't weighed in. But the people above the executives at the time that these executives were testifying actually weren't happy.
Yes, the other people,
I
it
don't believe
wasn't what. Okay, about whether or not they're happy. I don't like, I'm not really making a statement to that as much. It's more so that they were correcting what was said on the record, that this, like, that that the information that Trump provided that was supposedly fraudulent, that this would not have affected his like rate any because they were going to verify it themselves. That the bank said that that was incorrect. They said that that the oh yeah, I do think that they said that they weren't happy with the overall outcome
Yeah, I don't
because
give
they
a
said
shit.
that the,
I would
they,
assume
if they
I would
verified
say
some
that
of these
too.
things
I would
that
say
they
that too.
his
For two
well, I was gonna
reasons, I would say
say,
that.
I think that they would have said that they would have gotten more money as
Right.
in interest
So
if
for two reasons, I
if
would
some
say
of those
that.
things
Oh,
were
you're
correct.
saying
Yeah.
now legally we could have got a piece of that $500 million you're suing him for? Yeah, we would have liked that. And secondly, yeah, it's pretty evident that they're willing to fuck over any business that deals with Donald Trump now. So the political wins would be, yeah, shit on this dude. Yeah, we don't like that. Fuck yeah, fuck that guy. Yeah, I don't buy it. The people that did the loan at the time were happy with it. Everyone's happy. Why bring the charges in the first place? How did they
Yeah,
assess
but
the?
I can literally say the opposite as well. It's like, well, this is a guy that like they had a business relationship with, and so even if they did feel like this was fraudulent and they didn't want this to, they weren't happy with finding out that he was frauding them the entire time. They didn't want to fuck with their money. Like I can make the same like incentive argument in the
It's
opposite
but
direction.
but it's again. Why would they pursue the charges in the first place? If everyone is saying at the time, we're happy, we got our money back, the loan was paid back, we're happy, why pursue the charges?
For consumer protections, obviously, there has to be
Okay, so in
consistency
order to
between the
assess
system.
the 500 million something dollar fine, how would they come to that amount? Let's say that you think he's guilty. How would you determine how much to fine Trump?
I have no idea.
What do you mean you have no idea?
The amount that they fine him, I have no idea. It's like if they decide that he had a violation, that's more so what I'm looking into. But to decide how much he actually gets fined,
Well, the
that's
fine's the
generally
most
decided.
important part. The fine was designed to cripple him politically. $500 million. Like, for example, if I look into you and you're in the middle of a campaign season and I find out that you falsified information on your mortgage and that it led to a windfall for you of $30,000 and I fine you $30,000, that's one thing. If I fine you $500 million, how would I come to that conclusion?
Didn't the jury decide on the
How would
fine amount?
you're on a jury? How would you decide?
Would probably take into consideration how much we think this is going to affect the market, then consider like what is a good disincentive to try to stop
So you think
people
it was
from
just
doing this.
it was punitive, is what you're saying? It wasn't
Yeah,
based on like an
something.
actual. It wasn't based on any actual value.
Yes, obviously, yeah.
You're saying it wasn't based on a value.
Yeah, I don't believe so, no.
Okay, how would you determine the punitive nature of it? You said how much it would affect the market. Well, how would you determine how much it would affect the market as a juror? What are some of the facts you would want? This is simple.
Whether or not it affects the market?
That's what you said. You, as a juror, would say, how much will this affect the
Yeah,
market?
so as a practice, like I'm sure that there's regulatory laws that say that you're not allowed to lie on bank statements
Cool.
that you're
Gotcha.
signing saying that you.
We're talking about assessing a fine. How would you decide that? You seem to suggest it would be based on how much the market would be affected. How would you know how much? How would you come to the conclusion? What factors would you need to know how much the market would be affected?
Yeah, I don't think
You want
that
me to help
can
you?
have, like,
Isn't the
exact
very first
numbers
thing?
on
Here's the things
this.
I'd want to know. How much did Trump value it at? Right? You'd want to know that, right? Correct.
I don't. So I
Wait,
don't.
how is
think
this
so.
hard?
I
Yes
don't
or
think
no?
you're correct. I don't think that like that. No, I don't think that that value is the thing. It's not that like
So, just to be
because
clear-
you're doing the same thing where you're making it about like the bank being defrauded by a certain
Okay,
amount of money.
just to be
and
clear,
this is
just
the
to be
issue,
clear. So
whereas
your
it's not
argument
that the
is
bank
your
being
argument is
defrauded,
Trump
but the
values.
people of New York are being defrauded.
I just want to make this clear. Your argument is man says his house is worth $5,000. Or $50,000. It's actually worth $49,999. That's fraud. $500 million.
No, they're looking to see if there is some sort of good faith effort, obviously based on like some sort of relativity. So even
No
when
good
we
faith.
go and
In the
look
example I
at
just
the-
gave. No. Let's take one by one what you're saying here. No good faith effort. This prick that oversold his house by $1. No good faith. He's still staunchly. He's like, fuck you now. Okay, $500 million fine, correct?
Yeah, possibly. I would say
You're
that
a fucking idiot.
I would say that the amount that the person is worth is definitely going to play a factor into
Outrageous.
how much you're going
Outrageous.
to.
Here's how it would actually happen. You would say, what did he value the house at? What is the actual value of the house? In order to determine whether or not he overvalued it and how much he overvalued it. And then you would make some sort of estimation on what a potential fine should be. If someone overvalues their house $50, you wouldn't assess them a $500 million fine. It's ludicrous. You know it, I know it. And again, you do a disservice to yourself by saying shit like that because it makes you seem unreasonable. That's
You
ludicrous.
understand
You
it.
know
And
that's
what
ludicrous.
I said earlier is the fact that you're ignoring like my argument against it
I am
for
not.
some reason.
I am not
said-
ignoring your argument against it. Let me
so-
steel man your argument
go ahead.
against it then. Let me steel
Yeah, go
man,
ahead.
right? If the person hasn't made a good faith effort and they're worth a lot of money, then yes, just overvaluing something as little as $50 can justify a $500 million punitive fine. Can you show me one time in history where that's happened for any crime?
No, so I'm saying that your argument is making it sound as though he is being punished for defrauding the bank. That the money,
Okay.
the amount of money that he
He
didn't pay to the
defrauded the
bank is like
taxpayers
this
50
defrauding
bucks.
to the
He
bank.
defrauded the taxpayers 50 bucks. Okay? Same scenario. $500 million fine, right?
Yeah, so yes, no, again, I think that the amount that the person is worth, the amount that like is going into the entire thing. Yeah, so like I obviously yes, like the amount that they're paying for the amount that they're evaluating the properties for is probably somewhat
Holy
part of
shit,
it, saying
Tom!
that
We
like
got
yes, this is how
10
much that
minutes
they're
and you finally.
worth, but yes.
Oh, so now you're admitting you would want to know part of what would go into your calculation would be how much did he value it at versus how much is it actually valued at?
Yes, that would be part of
Yes.
it. To
Why
an
did it
extent,
take
yes,
so
but
hard to get
but
there? I
think
kept
that
saying it's easy. Okay, so what did they value it at? The jurors? The
there
prosecutors?
were there were 3 or 4 different
Cool.
valuations that went to the court. There
Can you
was
give me
one
the
that was
example of
the
what were
50
the
million, and I think one was 13
how
million.
did
I
they
think
come
were
how did they
the
come up with
like
those numbers?
the 13 million one came from the county commissioner's office, I believe, from at Mar-a-Lago, and then the
So the tax assessed
other
value?
one I believe but it was an old one. It was like old. I don't remember the exact date. I want to say it was like 2013 or something like that. Like by the time a former president has bought the house and like has even been shot at that house, like those values are going way up compared to what it was at the
Oh,
time.
okay.
But yes, there was a
How would you
wide
know
range
the amount of
of different
defrauding?
values.
How would you know the amount of the defrauding if one of the offers that they gave you're admitting are criminally low? Isn't
Y-
isn't that in
I,
spirit the same crime that they're accusing Trump of? If they're saying you've inflated the value of your property so as to defraud the taxpayer, wouldn't the opposite be true? That they're now saying that his value is so criminally low so that the taxpayer could get more money? Wouldn't that violate the same spirit?
well, no, because the one in New York, like it would have sold for, if it sold for that amount, literally would have been the most expensive home, not house, home anywhere, including
Cool.
houses,
That's irrelevant to what I
ever
just said. That's
in New
irrelevant to what
York
I just said.
City. And so,
That's irrelevant to what I just said. What I said was, okay, so you're saying, but his number was overinflated. And I'm like, right. How much was it overinflated? You've now conceded that that would be important to know when assessing a fine. And you're like, well, one of the numbers they used was 13 million, which is ridiculously low. And I'm like, right, wouldn't that also be sort of fraud in the opposite way? And you're like, well, but his number was really high. That doesn't answer my question.
I'm sorry, you're asking if the county is frauding him in the opposite direction by having an old estimate?
Correct. If they're saying that the judgment should be offered based on how much he harmed taxpayers, and that judgment's because we're using a number that the value of this property is 13 million, and that is laughably low, then it looks
Yeah,
like
sure.
it's magnified.
If that was the end up, if they ended up saying this is the one that we're going to use, we're only going to use the very old one, then yes, of course, they are
So
committing
which
some
one
sort
did
of
they
fraud in
use?
the opposite direction.
Which one did they use?
I think they used a group of them, so I don't.
Okay, so then
Again, from my understanding,
that
is that there
criminally low
were
number
many of them.
that criminally low number went into the average, and you're admitting that's
I
laughable.
don't know that there was an average. Again, no, I don't know that there was an average.
So then what was? So then how
know
did
that
they
there
use?
were
Okay,
a
if they
number
use
of estimates there,
if they use
but
three
I don't
numbers
know
and
how
they
they
didn't.
came to the
Okay, if they
estimate.
use three numbers and they didn't average them, explain what that means.
That they were given 3 different or 4 different estimates on the house, and that they were able to look at those to use them to try to understand. I would assume the one that was old is one that they would not take into
But the
consideration.
prosecutors gave the
Reason,
jury an option for that.
I guess, it was submitted to them. I know that it was part
You
of the
don't think that
evidence.
that's you don't think that that's absurd?
If they used it as part of their estimate, then yeah, that would be absurd.
So okay, and you're admitting that they did.
No, I don't know. I've said I don't.
You
I have
said
no
that the
idea if they used
prosecutor
any of them.
submitted to the jurors as one of the potential estimates that Forget about what the jurors
Or what
ultimately
it was
used.
part
Is
of the
there not a
evidence, yeah. But
responsibility of the prosecutors to submit accurate evidence?
yes, there. I don't know, dude. You're saying that they used it as part of
You're
their
saying it.
like
You said
process
that.
to get an estimate. Hold on. No, I didn't. I
Yes, you
said I
did.
have no idea what they used. I said that it was in the evidence for the case. I don't know if they used it for their
Do you
estimate.
want to
I don't know
rewind the
if they're
tape? Do you want to
the
rewind the tape of what you said? You said they used three numbers and made their decision. I said one of the ones that the prosecutor said this is what it sounds like you're saying. The prosecutor's like, here's a number, here's a number, here's a number. Hey, jury, pick one of those. You think that's reasonable for a prosecutor to do? Particularly when one's so criminally low?
Again, I don't even know that they took any of these into consideration, as I've been
You
saying the
said
whole
it,
time. I
not
have
me. Now
Okay,
you're
if I
backtracking.
said it, then I'm taking it back. Yes, I'm
Okay.
backtracking. I'm
So
totally
then what number
flopping
did
on
they
it. I
use?
don't think I ever said that, but
Okay, what
I
number
don't
did they
know.
use?
The whole time, I have no fucking idea. I've said
Huh.
the whole time, this is what I've said. I don't know. I
Right.
literally, when you said, oh, so they did an average, I said, I don't know if they did an average. I have no idea what
So
they
you don't
did.
know what
I
number they
don't
used.
know.
Don't you think?
I've said the whole
Okay, so
time, I
then
don't know
so
if they
then let me
used
say
any
this.
number.
Are you aware of the fact
They
that
may have used
Letitia
zero
James,
numbers.
are you while this was going on in a very unprofessional manner, mind you, Letitia James was tweeting out things like Trump's tax assessed value was X. That means he overturned. You're aware that she was sending that information out to the public, correct? She was tweeting about that?
No.
Well, she was. If she was, which I can find the tweet if you really don't believe me, do you think that's unprofessional to one be tweeting about it while the case is ongoing?
Y- Yeah, probably.
Okay.
I guess.
Second, if she did tweet that number, that 13 million or the tax assessed value, would you think that that was obviously misleading the public?
Yeah, probably.
So why would
If
she
it
do
was
that?
I don't know because she's a
Now,
horrible
over and
person.
over, I argue with Democrats here that said, yeah, that if your tax assessed value is one thing and you get a loan based on your property that's a higher number than that, you've committed fraud. Do you agree with that?
No.
Why not?
Well, because in this case, obviously, the tax assessment is old
What
and
if it's
outdated.
what if it's 2 years old?
It's 2 years old, then I would say that that is probably what we would use to decide whether or not your assessment is something we would consider to be a good faith assessment.
And I think that that's a lot of what was going into this, right? Dude, if you're paying taxes, right? If you're only paying taxes on your house being $50,000 and you get a loan claiming it's $100,000, something's fucked up there, right?
Say that again?
If you're only paying taxes on your property for $50,000 and then you get a loan for saying it's worth $100,000, that's what people were saying would be fraudulent.
Yes.
You realize, as far as I know, that's pretty much every homeowner in this country. Do you own a home?
Okay. Uh, no.
Do your parents or anyone you know own a home?
I've owned a home. I
Okay.
have owned a home.
Are you aware that did you get a mortgage to buy your home?
Yes.
Was your mortgage value higher than the tax assessed value?
Uh, Shit. I believe so, yes.
You committed fraud. Now, punitively,
Well,
have you
again,
made up for it? Because maybe you should be fined $500 million. Right? You committed fraud. You got a loan for your
in
house
the
saying it
case
was
of
worth one
Trump,
amount and the tax value was less.
in the case of Trump, though, we're not talking about like a couple $1,000s. Again, like, yes, all estimates, even depending on what person does the estimate, can come up with a very different number. There is not an exact science to how you do the estimates. There is a general science to how you do the estimates. And my dad is somebody who has done estimates for a living. So they have general numbers that they come to. But when yours is double, triple, quadruple, then yeah, now it seems as though there's something else
Double.
going on.
Okay,
This
so
is
I'm going to look this up. On average, how much higher is a mortgage value of a home higher than tax assessed? You're saying 0.75 okay, but double, you'd start to be suspicious. It's going to
Yeah.
be hard to find. It's going to be hard to find a percentage difference. I don't know if I'll be able to find it here this night. I mean, again, it's interesting.
Because also you're making it sound like there was like one property and one thing that they were like
It's not what I'm making
that
it
they were
sound.
taking into consideration. Well, no, because you did say numerous times like, oh, well, this one property is this much, so now he needs to be charged $355 million or something. But
That's
it's not.
irrelevant.
It's
It's
like,
irrelevant to what it's. Excuse me. It's
well, no,
what
it's not
happens
irrelevant.
is
You
what
said that
happens
was
is
the
what
entire way
happens
of
is
coming to
you're
the
talking
conclusion
about
of how much you were going
no
to
no no
find
no
me.
no no
You said that was the
no.
entire.
So there's two things that we could discuss here. One is the assessment of the punishment, and the second is the definition of what is the crime. So first we determine what is the crime, and then we say, okay, how severe did you commit that crime, which involves the price of the punishment. Now, previously, when we were talking about even $1, you said even $1 could lead to a $500 million fine. That's what you said earlier, depending on the wealth of the person. You said that, right?
Yes, if you said if you because you put the stipulation that we know that this was done in bad faith. Obviously, we would never say that like a $1 like a difference is actually a bad faith estimate, but you're putting the
Sure,
stipulation in
but
there that
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 I
is
agree
the
with that.
case.
You're
So yeah.
absolutely right. But if your home that you bought, you got $100,000 mortgage for, and the tax assessed value was $80,000, you absolutely knew there was a difference there. You knew it. So that was you intended to get a loan for your house worth more than the tax assessed value. So that meets
Sure,
your
but again,
criteria. It's not
sure,
$1.
sure, but
It's
again,
20. Right.
it is a general estimate, so there isn't a that it's
Listen.
actually worth this much versus that much.
That
But
is
I'm
absolute
like playing
bullshit.
along with the hypothetical
That
for the
is
sake of
absolute
the argument.
that is absolute bullshit. So let's rewind this. You said it would never happen with $1, but even as low as $1, if we could prove that you knew that you had overvalued your home, that would be fraud, and it could justify up to a $500 million fine. Then you say, but it would never be $1. I can see that, but I'm like, but it quite reasonably could be 20,000. Like that probably happens all the time. And you're like, well, yeah, but the tax assessed value, it's sort of arbitrary. I'll agree with that. Different assessors could assess different things. Yet you know, as the person who's purchasing the house, what the tax assessed value is. It doesn't matter if it's arbitrary or not, right? It doesn't matter at all. You know what that number is. And so, therefore, using your own logic, if you walk into a bank and say, I would like a mortgage for my home, or I'd like to, and I want that, my tax assessed is 100,000, but I'm not going to tell this dude that. I'm going to say it's 120,000 is what I want. And they say, okay, you've just committed fraud. Now you're saying that a penalty should be assessed to you based on how much that costs the taxpayers and punitively based on how much money you're worth. That's most of Americans' homeowners.
Yeah, to an extent, I am saying that yes, like to an extent, yes, that is like that is something that would be considered fraud. Obviously, I I in the case of like Trump doing this, and the amount of times that he did it, in the amount of ways that he did it, he is affecting the market in a way that they consider to be like big enough to like cause some sort of damage. So where I'm engaging with a hypothetical that would never happen, it's hard for me to continue branching out to a bunch of other things now that would obviously never happen, to continue going off of a thing that would never happen.
Now, Tom, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna ask you to be a gentleman here. My
But
wife,
I am going with it just for the sake of like for
okay.
argument.
Now
You know,
listen,
I'm
my
trying
wife's
my
in the
best.
chat,
Yeah.
so I'll ask you to be polite. But she did say this, and I have no reason to distrust her. She said she put it into AI and found that a typical tax assessment value is around 40 to 80% of market value. Now, you seem to say once it got to double that that's a serious issue. But if it's typically 40% to 80, that would mean 40, 50%. That's double. That's typical. You said that would be severe. Now what?
That I do think that, well, I think 100% would be double, right?
Well, if the tax assessed is 50% of the property, right? That would mean my property is worth
Oh yeah,
$100,000,
if
and the
it's assessed
tax
at
is
50% what it is.
50,000. So that would mean I would get the loan that was double the price of the tax assessed value. Right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, you said that would be significantly criminal.
For it to be double, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But that's typical. So you're
I
saying
I,
that the
I
average
would
American.
find that hard to believe unless it is the case that most tax, which I don't know if this is true, but yeah, unless most tax assessments are very old, and then in that case, yeah, probably is true because the markets have been going up at a pretty rapid rate that to where, yeah, depending on how old those assessments are, that could totally be the case.
Uh, I also have to bring someone else into this. Green Soldier. I don't know if I've heard one person say this, but he said, "Ask Tom why Trump was selected for this case when other billionaires openly admit to doing the same thing." Kevin O'Leary, for example, said he'll no longer do business in New York because this is how literally every single property speculator purchases property in New York. Why single out
Yes,
Trump?
he was saying, yeah, I remember him saying that. He was saying that everybody does overvalue themselves to some extent. In the case of Trump, they felt as though like they seem to agree that everybody does it to some extent, just not to the extent that he did it.
Mm-hmm. Last, if the again, I remind you, if the banks were saying at the time they were okay with it, what would be the impetus to investigate in the first place?
Say that again.
If the banks were saying at the time before the case was started they were happy with this, what's the impetus for
Mhm.
Letitia James to look into it for the first place?
I think she had a bone to pick with him. Sounds like because
I mean, my
they've
God, what
been
are we
planning
arguing
on
about? That's my
going
entire
after
argument.
him. Yeah, I think that I don't disagree that people have bones to pick with people, but obviously, like that was the case with Hunter Biden as well. Though I kept saying, like, yeah, but even though he is the first person to literally ever get charged with this crime, he did break the law. They did charge him with it. Like generally, you got to make an example out of somebody. If they
You
continue
actually,
from here
you,
and continue to
oh,
charge people with these sorts of cases and are consistent with this in some sort of way from here on out, like we'll have to see. But there has to be a first person sometimes. So like we'll see how this goes. But yeah, like I'm generally trying to like give
you've
the benefit of
actually
the doubt
stumbled,
until I
you,
see something
you've
else.
stumbled onto literally the worst take.